You just start off, I start with the org chart.
What is wrong?
And
800 Broadway. He's called me 3 times.
She
today. I
was
spoke
supposed
to
to
Cheryl 3 has no suspect signs that he called me on, and we went over the PD, and he paid for it. So clearly, somebody had to break the law and
Finish.
tag it into
Let's go.
let's go.
You ready, sir?
Then we can end up with something back here.
Good evening. I'd like to call our Community Redevelopment Agency regular meeting to order. The date is September 13th. The time is 8:48 p.m. Madam Clerk?
Chair Lawson,
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Here.
Commissioner McCoy,
here.
Commissioner Miller Anderson, Commissioner Botel. Also present on the dais, Attorney Chris Smith with Pittman Law Group, Jonathan Evans, the CRA Executive Director, Scott Evans, Director of Planning and Development, Anita Jenkins, Director of Neighborhood Services, Shirley Desir, Interim CRA Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And if we can have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman McCoy. Thank you, Commissioners. Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions?
None from staff, Mr. Chair.
Disclosures by the Commissioner staff? A motion to adopt the agenda? Do
Motion to adopt the agenda.
we have a second?
Oh, second.
Thank you. Motion been made and properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Botel,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Commissioner Pro Chair Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 5-0.
Consent agenda, routine business by the consent. Consent is adopted by one vote of a majority item. Items may be removed for open discussion at the request of a commissioner on the Riviera Beach Commission. Would anyone want to remove an item from consent? Motion to adopt consent?
Motion to adopt consent agenda. Second.
Motion been made and properly second. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Botel,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 5-0.
Thank you. With no presentation discussion, we'll go straight into our regular agenda. Resolution number 2023-20.
Resolution number 2023-20 of the Board of Commissioners of the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency, approving the budget for fiscal year 2023-2024, providing an effective date. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed, Mr. Chair. We have no comment cards.
Motion to approve resolution number 2023-20.
Second.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, at this time, I will turn the presentation over to Mr. Scott Evans, the Director of Planning and Development, and he will also be joined with Ms. Anita Jenkins, the Director of Neighborhood Services for the CRA.
Mr. Chair.
Welcome, Mr. Evans, and welcome, Ms. Jenkins.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the CRA board. Tonight, we have before you the annual budget for the CRA. This year, our revenue, we derive our revenue from Palm Beach County and the city of Riviera Beach. And this year, we're expecting approximately $4.3 million in revenue from Palm Beach County, and then an additional $7.978 million in revenue from the city of Riviera Beach. And this revenue is derived from the amount of taxes that increased from the date of the establishment of the CRA. So from that date, any tax increases that happened within the boundary are then provided to the CRA for reinvestment in the area. The total revenue for this, the total revenue for this coming year includes all of our rental revenue. We collect rent on the Rafiki Tiki. We rent out 3 different kiosks, 4 different kiosks on the beach here at Marina Village. And then also we have the Cash America property located at Broadway and Blue Heron. In addition to that, we have the Palm Beach County and City of Riviera Beach revenue I just referenced. And then we carry over any unspent expenditures from the previous year to establish how they will be spent in the coming year. And our budget is broken down into the following categories. We have redevelopment projects and programs, housing and neighborhood services, our Clean and Safe program, operations and administration, debt service. Then we have our contribution to capital projects, and we also have our Marina Village enterprise operations. And those are the main areas that make up our budget. Starting with administration, these are the costs for our operations. They include legal and financial services, the operations of our actual office facility, from office equipment, printing, and this total budget is proposed at $1,461,486. Our debt service is one of our largest expenditures each year. So this includes our bond funds that make up our capital improvement program, as well as the completed capital improvements projects like this Marine Event Center and the infrastructure related to Marina Village Phase 1. We also have a bond payment note to the City of Riviera Beach for the Ocean Mall Park and infrastructure. Our total debt service in the coming year is gone down to $4,119,073. It will be a similar number in 2025, and then in 2026, it will go down to approximately $2 million, at which point this board would have the opportunity to make a final bond issuance if it's so desired, since our debt service will substantially be reduced in 2 years.
Mr. Chair, the next page in the presentation is an illustration of our organizational chart, and you'll note that there is very little difference from the previous year to this year, but the notable change is the addition of the Economic and Business Development Project Specialist that you've heard described throughout the workshops and budget presentations over the last few weeks. Next, we have our personnel summary by division, and just a couple of notable changes there where when this budget was presented last year, we had a senior project assistant / finance processing clerk, where that position, there was a promotion of that staff person. And this year, you see the new position of project manager for neighborhood services. Also last year, there was a part-time project assistant for CDC, which was unfilled. That was intended to be paid through the CDC, but it was not filled, and that is eliminated in the count. You'll see several other reductions in staff and adjustments in the Clean and Safe program, where there is the elimination of 1 position, and also 2.5 FTEs within the ambassadors for unfilled positions. Overall, we've reduced our FTEs by 4 positions. A few notable facts about staffing. Our average hourly rate for the agency as a whole is $30.60. This includes our administration and ambassadors. Our lowest hourly pay, which is our starting pay, is $19.50. And just note, in answer to some questions, that it shows that there is parity with city comparable positions where the starting pay for maintenance workers, for instance, in Public Works and Parks and Rec, is $17.96, and our starting pay is a little higher. Last year, you'll know that during the budget session, there was a 15% increase for ambassadors only. And throughout the year, we have had 12 training and development staff days completed by admin and ambassadors. The average longevity in our agency is 5 years, and our average vacancy is 5.6%.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Quick question. Councilman McCoy, please.
Yes, sir.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Jenkins, the 15% that you're speaking of, that occurred a year ago. Why was that? Was that as a result of the board taking action in the budget?
Yes, sir.
And was that done across the board for everybody that, I guess, effectively is in this organizational chart under clean and safe?
For the ambassadors.
For the ambassadors, okay.
Yes, sir.
So did they not get a COLA last year?
Yes, sir.
So there was a COLA in addition to the 15%?
Let me ask our administrative director. I don't want to misspeak.
And while we're working on that,
I
she's
have the
there.
answer. It was a combination of the COLA plus a 10% increase, which totaled the 15%.
Okay.
So the
one more
COLA
time.
was 5%, and with an addition of a 10% increase to total 15%.
Okay. So how many vacancies do we have of ambassadors?
At the present moment, we have, if we approve the budget, it'll be one whole ambassador in a part-time position.
Okay, I'm speaking of vacancies, not what we anticipate on filling.
Right, as we speak, just one position is open.
Okay. And are we recruiting for that?
We actually have someone scheduled for tomorrow for an interview.
Okay. All right. That's it for now. I appreciate the comparison with the city. But I do have a couple other questions when we get down to what we're talking about, at least going forward for this fiscal year coming up. I mean, do we have that anticipated?
Yes, sir. We brought the lease before you, I believe at the meeting, 2 meetings ago, and that was approved, and that amount is included in the clean and safe budget.
The lease?
I thought you asked about the lease.
No, I'm speaking of salaries because when I looked at this, I was trying to see the various departments. Seemingly, when I had the side-by-side presentation, which I don't exactly have here today, it seemed like there was certainly a considerable increase in administration, but when it came down to the event center staff and event center staff and clean and safe operations, I didn't see the same. There was certainly not the same treatment. There wasn't the same increase.
I believe
Mr.
that.
Chair, may I?
Ms. Shirley, please.
Based on the staffing that we're projecting for the year, there has been a decrease of 3.5 positions for the ambassador. So that is why it shows that there's a decrease in the number for the budget.
So when we get to that item, I did have that question, the same question that Councilman McCoy had with the salaries for our ambassadors. And so when we get to that item, if we can just kind of dive a little deeper into that one.
Yes,
Because
sir.
those are the same sentiments. I was looking at the same side by side and I didn't see the salary or what increase was actually given to our ambassadors and our event center staff. So we'll come back to that one and address it when we get there.
Good. Yes, we can do that. Thank you. Moving on to neighborhood services, you'll see some similar line items to the last few years where we've actually reduced the amount allocated to our community garden program by about 10-15%. There are dollars for some existing programs, and you'll see that there is a change where we're contemplating a $200,000 allocation, if approved, for the Lakeview Park improvements. Under housing initiatives, you'll see that there is an addition for the Berkeley Landing local match, which was approved by this board about 2 years ago. And because the project will be finishing construction in this fiscal year and converting from construction to perm, we now are obligated to pay the local match, to pay that loan.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McCoy.
You know, and I thought about this after the fact because I thought that was going to come back to us as the city, but I hope they're right because I don't know if I have another strain in me. If this has issues with Florida Finance Housing Corporation, I just don't know if I can go back through this again. You know, we already promised them a second shot at this, but if for some reason that should have been approved and it becomes to be a problem later, then that's on them. I just don't understand.
Sir, Berkeley Landing is under construction. They're nearing completion. They received the tax credits more than a year ago, and we had a closing with the CRA, the city, and Berkeley Landing before they started construction. So they have the tax credits. They were awarded that. So there's no problem with that. The project is fully funded. It's a little ahead of schedule, and I believe you all asked for a presentation and update. And I believe Mr. Evans contemplates bringing that in mid-October or early November. They have the tax credits.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was off. I was talking about Marina Phase 2. Yeah. So.
Out in this budget.
Thank you, Councilman. I did have a question. I see that Lakeview Park improvements, that 200,000 that's budgeted, that's not going anywhere regardless of any outside projects that's going to be factored in. Is that going to change if anything else or any other items are voted on?
That item is a reserve. We were waiting to see the outcome of what would happen with the city's infrastructure program. So if in fact that project is not proceeding, then we would bring that back to the board for future discussion to determine what you wanted to do. But we have not changed the allocation, the current budget before you. It's still identified as a reserve for infrastructure improvements for that neighborhood.
Okay, let the record reflect that Mayor Felder is not on the dais. If you can continue with the presentation, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
just a slight correction. He's off the dais.
I'm sorry. Thank you for clarity. Let the record reflect the mayor is off the dais.
I don't know if he was actually ever on for roll call, so that's interesting.
Well, I was going to announce he was here, but he did come and leave. So the mayor has attended and then left the
Oh, wait,
dais.
I got it. He has come and gone.
Continue, Mr. Evans. Mr. Scott Evans, continue, please. Or Ms. Jenkins.
Just notably, we're proposing $300,000 for the Renaissance program, the down payment assistance, and $400,000 for reclaim from the CRA side. And you see the proposed items that are also in the capital budget for Villa La'Ans 1 and 2. And we've carried those amounts forward. And the CDC support services of $300,000 for a total neighborhood services budget of $4,250,000. With neighborhood services, we were asked to bring a timeline for phases 1 and 2. And the next slide illustrates the timeline. As you recall, phase 1 site plan and replat were approved this summer. We anticipate the permit in the fall, et cetera, leading to closings in spring of 2025 when the project is fully completed.
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you. So, Ms. Jenkins, when did we decide on, or staff came up with the suggestion of $1 million for phase 2 for Villa Leons? Because I thought we specifically, that question was brought up at the last presentation.
That was for potential phase 3. This is for phase 2.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the previous slide. What are we referring to? Because I'm looking at the $1 million for phase 2, the last item there.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Evans.
So the last time that the CRA board amended our capital budget, project budget, the additional $1 million was assigned to the Phase 2 portion of the townhouse projects. And during that time, that was the Avenue E project, for which the CRA only had a small portion of the dollars, was added to the city's Reimagine project along with the new city hall. And those dollars were reappropriated by the board to Phase 2 of the townhouse project.
Okay, all right, I just don't understand what we're doing with Villa Leon's Phase 2. Especially considering, I know we're gonna talk about this, but I don't see that there's set to do, we're not even close to that. Why would we book it right now in this budget?
We're about ready to submit for site plan application for Phase 2. We brought regular updates and shown the progress of pre-development for the second phase. As you recall, it has Phase 2A with an additional 12 townhomes that we want to get moving fairly quickly because we need the home ownership. And Phase 2B will be the rental and the bottom floor retail.
Okay, Mr. Chair, follow up. So,
Mr. McCoy, go ahead.
Ms. Jenkins, I want to understand, is Phase 2 fully funded? Does the CDC have full funds for Phase 2?
No. For construction financing for Phase 2. And we're just at the point with Phase 1 going forward with financing, but we'll be able to do so.
Yes, but we're talking about 12 months. So exactly, this goes back to the conversation that I think you got more than the majority of the board to say, I don't want to tie up capital dollars like we did for this utility burial. It seems that the monies can be well used somewhere else in a more effective and immediate response to addressing housing needs. But at this point, I mean, even looking at your development, what portion is the $1 million going to be spent to? Because I don't know that I see that. I don't see that until what? It says fall 2024. So that puts us at a whole entire year from now. So do we need $1 million set aside for Villa Leon's Phase 2 at this point?
Sir, if we could look at the timeline for Phase 2 in terms of pre-development, we expect to have a groundbreaking in the fall of 2024. As I said, we've been working on the architecturals and the surveys and environmentals and engineering, and we're about ready to submit for site plan approval for Phase 2. Phase 1, we already have the replat, site plan approved, et cetera, and we're ready to move forward with applying for our permit and securing a contractor.
Well, you said you're about to submit first. Now you're saying it's been approved for Phase 2?
It's been approved. Phase 1 has been approved.
I'm talking about Phase 2.
Phase 2, we're at the point where we have our construction documents, et cetera, so we're able to submit for site plan approval. And it's a process.
Okay, well, Ms. Jenkins, thank you. I respect what it is that you do. You remind me, thank you. And I know you're a consummate professional. I'm just trying to make sure that we're efficient in what we're doing. So I'm looking forward to a groundbreaking in fall 2024 for Phase 2. And certainly I know you can get it done.
Thank you. Few items we'd like to point out for neighborhood services. We've talked about in the last meeting about bringing forth a scorecard for our various programs. And we putting forth this opportunity to show you a few of the items that might be included in a neighborhood services scorecard in terms of the number of homes rehabbed, the number of homes in process, number of closings that we have, and these scorecards will be updated on a quarterly basis. The number of first-time home buyers in mortgage processing, number of residents completing homebuyer counseling and financial literacy. And we just listed some numbers in terms of where we are currently for this year. Okay. A few other.
Chair,
Pro Tem, go ahead.
you go back to
Yes, ma'am.
so we have actually, in a year's time, we have 4 houses that we close on that, you have 100 people going through the home buyers club, but you only close on 4 houses. And I think that the city, we spend a lot of money in these neighborhood services programs, and I've always been kind of disappointed with the low amount of people who are getting into homes. And I understand the whole process that comes into it, because it does take some time, but 4 houses is just, that's not good for me. And I understand that there's process that you have to go through. I understand that there's a lot of, hurdles and obstacles that you have to go through. But when you have that many people who are coming through the home buyers club and you can only get 4 homes, we got to figure out some way to make that number, to increase that number. And I know that there's different levels to this, but I really would like to see an increase in the number of home buyer closings in a particular year. Because this amount is just, that's 1 a quarter. That's just not good for me. It's a lot of money being spent in this program, meaning that I would like to see more home buyer housing closings in a particular year instead of just 4, because I think we had 4 or 5 last year, which those are not real good numbers for me, especially when you have the amount of money that we're spending in this program.
I agree
please
with
take-
you, Commissioner, and we hear you loud and clear, and that's why we're also working on production, on development of housing. I heard something yesterday that really shocked me, where the median price of housing in our county is $600,000. So it's a matter of being able to produce housing for our community. So we hear you, and we're working not only with preparing the buyers so they're able to close, with identifying subsidy, with helping to apply for dollars, but also in producing housing that people can buy. So
Go ahead,
we
Pro Tem.
appreciate it.
Yeah, how does that work? Because I think that when you say that there is a $600,000.
I can't hear her, Chair.
I'm sorry.
There's a
Yep.
$600,000.
Push the mic down.
You're
Push
pushing it.
This part, Shirley. Push it in.
Oh, that part, okay. There's a $600,000 median income. So I think I would like to know, how is the CRA trying to collaborate for that? Because I know there's SHIP dollars, there's other funding that's out there, because clearly the people who are going through your home buyers program are not going to be able to afford $600K. So what are you actually doing to collaborate with other funding sources to at least get home buyers to a point where they can afford it? Because if we're looking at $600K, I don't think any of those 100 can afford $600K. So how do you look at that going forward to make sure that we get people to that point where they can get that kind of money? That's a lot of subsidy, but what are we doing to look at that though?
As I mentioned, and without getting too much in the weeds, the AMI, the average, or not average, but the median price of housing in the county is approaching 600,000. So to give you some idea, the homes that were recently closed on were in the range of 320,000 to 350,000. The county has received full funding from the state for SHIP dollars. They don't have an open process. They are about to open their application process for down payment assistance. They give up to $100,000. You all approved a program where we're only able to give, not only, but we give up to $50,000. So for some of the lower income buyers, you could put the 2 programs together. And we're very good at leveraging to make homes as affordable as possible. So there are different strategies to use, and their The reality is there just is not enough subsidy to really impact the numbers. As you know, the county has a bond program, but the priorities that the county commission has set forth is that the majority of the $200 million bond will go for rental housing. So I'm part of a group that's been fighting, advocating. We had a meeting yesterday with Mr. Jonathan Brown on strategies to make the bond useful for homeownership. So I assure you that we're doing everything we can to create as much homeownership opportunity as possible. And we appreciate the support from the CRA board and the city council and Mr. Evans and our lenders and everybody else in trying to make it possible.
Chair, just
Go ahead, Pro Tem.
one more question. Because of this 600K huge hurdle, have the CRA looked into either tiny homes or container homes or something else that we can look at in terms of home ownership? Anything explore, because it seems that if you're looking at 600K, it is going to be hard pressed to get more than 2 or 3 people in homes a year. So are you looking at different structures of terms of ownership?
Just to clarify again, we're not looking at producing or placing people in $600,000 homes.
No, I know.
Just yesterday, there was, as you recall, we're part of a pilot project with just about all of the housing stakeholders in the county on coming up with different regulatory strategies, et cetera. And we had a meeting yesterday talking about accessory dwelling units, tiny homes, et cetera. And those would be changes on the city side that would have to be made to accommodate those strategies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pro Tem. And that home ownership that you're creating, because I agree with Councilwoman Pro Tem Lanier, just the 4 homeowners. I know that we just provided some funding to assist with that process, and you have some of the pipeline we're working on. I know that construction for those 11 new townhouses will help with that home ownership. So that'll help with providing some inventory, because the inventory is tight. It's slim here in Riviera Beach from what I'm seeing in the price point. So the sooner we can get these construction done. Phase 2, does it have any owner occupant or homeowners, or is that going to be all rentals?
Depending upon where capital is when we're ready to go for construction financing, we may do the top floor as owner occupied condos. We may be able to bring some additional home ownership there.
So, and we will be looking at that prior to the site plan and the
Yes, sir.
approvals. The contractors that you're securing for these projects, being that we're in the permitting phase and we're going for groundbreaking in January, what contractors and how were they secured for the phase 1?
There would be a public process to secure contractors.
Okay, so it hasn't been secured as of yet?
Not yet.
Okay. And those contractors that we're looking to help build phase 1, are we going to be looking at one contractor? Are we looking at one GC, a master developer? What's going to be the plan for those 11 townhouses?
For 12 townhomes, we'd have one contractor.
One contractor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How do we really focus on trying to bring in some local participation to assist with that construction?
As we've done in the past, we'll have contractor outreach opportunities, letting our community, contractor community, know what is available, what's coming down the pipeline. We encourage contractors who call to apply through our application process to visit our business tax receipt department and our procurement department. So we'll continue to make those efforts.
How can we be a little bit more creative and spread the wealth on that 11 townhomes? Because one contractor coming in, I think that we can give an opportunity to multiple individuals to work on this project. So I want to be creative with those steps. Just one contractor versus possibly having a few different subs and contractors working on this together would actually give us an opportunity to spread the wealth a little bit.
We'll look at that. It wouldn't be feasible to have 2 separate contractors, but I can foresee where there would be some joint venture with several contractors working on the project.
A joint venture or just local subs and
Yes, sir.
incentivizing them. So
Most definitely.
so we can definitely make sure we're spreading the wealth.
Most
and then
definitely.
and then of course really kicking up that home ownership, because I agree with Pro Temp Lanier that we want to try to create as many homeowners as possible in the community, and inventory is tight. So we're going to expedite and push the process of building these units and assist with that. But we want to try to get as many homeowners as possible this year. We want to double or triple that number.
Yes, we hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
And just mentioning the other two programs, we're doing several things in business certification. Last night, we kicked off our Business Sense program, and in October, we'll be coming to you with the application process for our Small Business Entrepreneur program. And you see opportunities that we're looking forward to with our Small Business Incubator program. Found Care Project, which is 5,000 square feet, the opportunity in Berkeley Landing, where there will be 2 live-work lofts, et cetera, that we hope to assist our small business community. Part of the scorecard that we will be bringing to you on a quarterly basis, we'll be looking at things like number of events at the Marina Event Center. And just to let you know, so far this year, we have hosted 403 events. We'll be looking at innovative strategies for home ownership, for small business development, for neighborhood revitalization. For instance, the housing initiative for Housing for All.
So,
And
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, so when you say 403 events, what does that mean? This has been leased or city sponsored functions? Explain what that 403 means.
it's a combination of both. It's all events of all sizes where the event center portions of it have been booked. 403 discrete events.
Okay.
We just illustrate our neighborhood services programs, the Renaissance program, the Reclaim program, and that brings us to our Clean and Safe program.
The Clean and Safe Operations budget is for the operation of the office, which is located over on Blue Heron, and includes repairs and maintenance to some equipment, office supplies, and training, as well as some capital. And I would ask that our administrative manager correct me, but the question was asked related to staffing. So the CRA has budgeted I believe 5% cost of living reserved. Our general method of proceeding with those kind of increases has been to follow the city of Riviera Beach to determine once they make a decision, then we do a similar one. So I believe the budget is we are carrying 5% cost of living. And then the Clean and Safe program has a 4% performance review. And the board, that was what replaced the STEP program. When the board introduced that 10% increase, and the STEP program, it didn't really make sense anymore as far as where the pay had been adjusted to. So at that time, we implemented a 4% annual performance review, which is what we're also carrying for the next year.
Mr. Chair,
Madam Clerk, go ahead.
I'd like to first make a correction on record. I stated that there was a decrease of 3.5 employees for the Clean and Safe. It's actually 2.5 going into the new year. And Ms. Scott Evans, there is, last year we did get approved for 4% for an annual increase for the ambassadors. This year we're projecting up to 3%.
So, Madam Clerk, you said that last year it was a 4% increase for the ambassadors, but total increase was 15%. Can you break that down for me?
Yes, last year during the budget meeting, there was a discussion of increasing the ambassadors all across the board. So we did go back and we calculated a 15% increase, which was a 5% COLA plus a 10% increase. The 4% that Scott Evans discussed is the annual review that we are currently going through the process now before the end of the year. And based on each individual's annual review, they can earn up to a 4% increase for the year.
Okay, so one second, Councilman, and I guess my concern is that I really want us to dive a little deeper into that with addressing that cost of living, with that salary, with that annual increase, because our ambassadors has essentially been a training ground, a pipeline, a opportunity and a vehicle to bring in amazing individuals from our community, have them work within the city, and then also kickstart and go into other departments. I've seen how our staff has just poached ambassador. That's why we're running so tight with just refilling. So I want to make sure that we're starting them up at a stronger salary and possibly even a better increase, because I think that this is our breeding ground for bringing in qualified staff and training them from within and then moving them throughout the city. I've seen so many ambassadors that have gone over to different departments, and even some of our seasoned ambassadors that have been here for so long. And one of my best, that just went up to Cincinnati was my legislative aide that started right here as an ambassador. So my heart goes out to these ambassadors because I know what they can do for our community and what they're currently doing. The whole department, I appreciate all of my staff, every single one of them. I just know that we want to train and develop and grow from within, and that starts with one of our programs, which is kind of our ambassador program. So I really want us to see what we can do about that salary to make sure it's at the highest capacity that we can afford in our CRA, to keep them, to train them, and to move them into different departments. Councilman McCoy, or Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it was pretty much established in a previous slide that they're paid well above what the starting salary is for, I guess, the closest comparable position over at the city. Is that correct, Ms. Jenkins?
Yes, sir.
Considerably more, Mr. Chair. However, I did just take note of what Ms. Desir said. Subject to an annual review. What is that? That's not COLA.
It's not COLA, it's their annual performance for the year.
Okay, so
Plus COLA.
First, pardon?
It would be the performance amount plus
Plus the
COLA.
COLA.
So you're looking at a proposed
Of
9%.
between the end of this year and early of the October 1st, it'll be a combination of 9%.
Okay, so I don't understand. So when we do cross the board raises, it's not automatic. It depends on their annual review.
For the 4% amount. Generally, it's an incentive. The COLA is across the board, and then the performance pay is based on performance. The good thing is that we have high-performing staff.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly, because is that the true for the city? Because I mean, if we give across the board increase at the budget, I didn't know it was subject to an annual review.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Evans, go ahead.
Most of our workforce that's comparable is collective bargaining agreements. So that's codified in their contracts. And how some of those contracts specifically read is that you are subject to a performance evaluation, not a situation that performance, you will be paid based on performance. We tried to negotiate that particular element, but the union pushed back and they said, well, let's just make sure that they are subject to a negotiation. So as we go into the next iteration of union negotiations, that's when we're going to ask for the paid for performance matrix.
I would push back too, Mr. Evans, because that seems so subjective. With the amount of, and you use this word quite a bit, attrition and turnover that we have in the organization. I just would hate to have some employees, more or less performance to be built off, increase to be built off of a performance evaluation, when in many cases, I just know that has not been done. And we've seen that, I think, in auditor findings that, certain things of that nature wasn't done. However, I feel like if there's performance issues everybody should be entitled to it. I mean, everyone should be entitled to it. If there's an issue with performance, you put them on a performance plan. If that doesn't work, then we're offering them an opportunity to submit a resignation. I mean, I think that's seems like the more appropriate thing, but I just don't see how upper management gets the opportunity to continue to get these kind of increases. And I would assume that they get these evaluations or reviews as well. But I want to make sure that everybody gets it. If they can't, then we probably need to help them figure out where they want to be at in the organization or in whatever other organization.
So, Mr. Chair, if I
Stevens,
may,
go ahead, please.
To coincide, and we've tried on both the CRA side and the city side to have parity. So it would be my recommendation that the board consider that, the same type of language that we have codified in our SEIU union contract, that the employees are subject to a evaluation, but they will get the 5% and they will get the 4%. They just have to have an evaluation done. So it mirrors the same type of language that's provided for in the contract. And if and when that ever changes, then we'll ensure that there's consistency on both sides.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Go ahead, Ms. Jenkins or Mr. Evans.
The budget includes $217,500 for our new innovative policing initiative. Under this program, 2 new police officers will be joining the existing complement that is within that area in of the city. And this will be a special policing initiative designed to increase investment in the CRA's downtown area, improve the quality of cleanliness and maintenance in the CRA area. They're going to work with code enforcement and with the Clean and Safe ambassadors in a targeted approach to ensure public safety in an effort to reduce crime, improve the public perceptions of nighttime safety, and enhance pedestrians' feelings of safety in the area, which hopefully will allow us to increase our nighttime tourist activity in the future and enhance visual appearance of our existing structures by working collaboratively with code enforcement. And I know that there's a number of other changes that the police department is trying to make in order to really focus on helping the CRA become that economic center for jobs and development that we are all hoping it would be. And we believe that this was the first step in helping us make sure that this area moves along and improvements at the same time as all the new development that we are hoping to bring to the area.
Mr. Scott Evans, we'll have 2 dedicated police officers for our CRA district based on this initiative. What is the difference from what our officers are currently doing versus what these 2 officers will be doing?
Mr. Chair, if I may speak from an operational perspective. So we will still have zone officers within the district. We have personnel on the city side that is obviously going to be working in the Broadway corridor as well as Blue Heron. These specific officers would be dedicated specifically to that particular zone and would not be called out for any other types of services. They will also look to address quality of life services. So they will work hand in hand with the ambassadors. They'll work hand in hand with the Clean and Safe supervisor. They're more of the folks that you would see riding the bicycles through the neighborhood, knocking on the doors, leaving cards on people's doors, on their vehicles that says, "Hey, your car was left open," and those types of things. So it's more of a direct service that's going to be in that specific area versus our existing patrol units. They are patrolling the community, but they're not as active in the activities that we're looking to provide this. And so Chief Coleman has a more robust plan. This is just some of the high surface level components of that. And before the plan goes into implementation, certainly we'll make sure that the documents are shared with the board. And then you hear from Coleman and Deputy Chief Coppin on how the program is going to be rolled out. This is obviously the highlight, but then ensuring that the monies are appropriated for the purposes of beginning the program here in the first part of the fiscal year.
And I guess I need to hear some more about it, because I'm not sold on two dedicated officers coming out of the CRA budget for policing. I'd rather those dollars go into our ambassadors. I thought that's why we created the ambassadors program, for that engagement, for crime reduction, for a visual, to have somebody hands-on in the community. So I'm not sure why our zone officers or policing initiative would be needed when we already have zoned officers in that area.
So, Mr. Chair, if you do recall, this is in a response to the direction that we got from the board with respect to the elevation of law enforcement in the area. Specific when the gentleman came and communicated what occurred on his vessel. So staff did go back and had the conversation with the chief to say, how can we increase law enforcement activities within the area? We are seeing a substantial influx of persons that are homeless, persons that are actively engaged in multiple activities through the corridor. I think I've probably spoken to a couple of you with respect to some challenges that are present in the corridor, and our officers are running multiple calls throughout the city. This provides for some relief on the call volume that you have in that particular area because it allows for more proactive policing. So that is the intent behind doing this. This is a program that is very common in other CRAs. More specifically, this is a program that Chief Coleman has built out in the previous community that he served. So he is well familiar of what the benefit of this type of program would be to the city of Riviera Beach. Mr. Evans or Ms. Jenkins, I don't know if there's any more comments or discussions that you guys have had with respect to this program.
Chair, in terms of mobilizing and implementing a more robust ambassador program, we've been working all year in terms of the training, in terms of deploying ambassadors, in terms of the more visible uniforms, et cetera, and the placement of ambassadors so that they might complement some more intense attention to the CRA area. So the ambassadors will be more visible to the community on the corridors, et cetera, and they'll make sure that we have assigned ambassadors for particular activities. Because sometimes there is a question, we get a request, for instance, from a particular neighborhood for ambassadors to come and do 1, 2, or 3. So we'll be able to have a more cohesive strategy working with police department, code enforcement, public works, and the ambassadors if this is approved.
And I would love to kind of hear more from the chief. Maybe we can have a discussion, because I know these officers are going to report to the chief, but are they going to have weekly meetings with staff? Who in the CRA are they going to report to? What's going to be the zones? How are they going to operate in the CRA? Are they going to work hand in hand with our ambassadors, with our event space? It's really understanding this program and these dollars that's coming out of the CRA to go to our police officers when we already have them zoned for this area. So I want to know exactly what they're going to be doing. Are they going to be wearing regular standard uniforms? Are they going to have community policing uniforms? So it's just getting a little bit more in depth for what these dollars are being spent before I can agree to moving the zoned officers that we already have and just adding more there, as opposed to more of a clearer understanding for it. Board members, any other questions about the innovative policing initiative? Continue, Ms. Jenkins and Mr. Evans.
The change between last year and this year for the Marina Village and Event Center budgets primarily is the identified need to make improvements to this space and to the Event Center building itself. So as a total combined for Marina Village, we've proposed to provide $350,000 for repairs, maintenance, refresh for this building and some of the outside items. This includes the flooring and carpet in our meeting rooms, some furniture replacement that is needed, interior painting and surface of the ceiling repairs, as well as a few surface repairs to the walls. We'd like to do an audio-visual upgrade. That particular aspect of the project, we believe will require phasing over 2 years. This is because the improvements could range anywhere between $100,000 and $600,000. And then also the outdoor lighting, which is already underway. We would complete that project to refresh all of the lights because a number of the lights needed to be replaced. And I believe that we have made good progress on that. And it also includes some speaker replacements and minor exterior repairs to this building. So all of those items would ultimately come back before this board for policy decision and approval of some of the contracts to implement them, as well as some of the design choices related to flooring and carpet. I have heard some concerns from some of the board members related to, we are currently discussing the future of this meeting space with the proposed development team for Marina Village Phase 2. However, we are anticipating that the City Council, CRA Board, Planning and Zoning Board, Special Magistrate, all would continue to utilize this space as their community meeting space for at least until the new City Hall has been built, which is a time period of at least 3 to 4 years. So we know that the event center will continue to be used for the purposes like we are here tonight and for city use. So although we are still discussing what the future arrangements might look like, and quite frankly, we're waiting on some of the details from the development team who are looking to put together a revised proposal, we do know that we are going to continue to need to use it for the purposes of these meetings. And the development team is proposing that the future would include collaboration with their new hotel. So the use for the meeting spaces they're looking at right now would continue to be needed. And so we would look to spend any of the dollars in the coming year to improve and refresh the meeting spaces primarily, as well as the outside lighting, which is a safety concern. And then some minor exterior repairs to prevent any more water intrusion. And I'll pause for board.
Commissioner McCoy, then Commissioner Pro Tem Lanier. Go ahead, Commissioner McCoy.
Mr. Scott Evans, the first question is the $350,000. I'm looking at this slide and then the previous one. Is that, if we can jump back, is that broken down between the marina and the event center?
Yes, it is. Under repairs and maintenance for Marina Village, we have 75,000. And then under repairs and maintenance for the event center, we have 275.
Okay, so how do you fix lights for $75,000? I don't understand that. That seems like a much larger project.
Actually, yes, our new clean and safe manager, with some assistance from our project manager, took a creative approach to try and identify how we could fix those lights for reduced cost. And actually, they were very successful in collaborating with a local Riviera Beach company to identify a way to refurbish the existing lights. So the clean and safe ambassadors were helpful in working to assist with that project. So they partnered with a local Riviera Beach company, and they were able to have been able to replace, I believe, up to 50 lights so far, with a much less cost than we had originally if we had to actually replace those lights.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
I appreciate that, and I got to give kudos. Chris, right?
Yes.
Okay. We really greatly, at least I do, because I take notice of those very small things. So I certainly can appreciate your efforts on that. Thank you so much. But Mr. Scott Evans, I don't even think that even touched the surface. I just went over to this restroom. Do our guys regularly, routinely pressure wash? I mean, this place looks like Skid Row. It's so much dirt and filth when you go in and around these bathrooms. And I'm literally here on a Saturday and Sunday, and I see people going in and out of there. This is like a 24-hour operation. This place needs to be pressure washed at least once bi-weekly. And I mean, I just don't see it. When I walk up the promenade, I'm looking at these grates that are broken. I look at water, I smell the restaurant. I'm like, clearly there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed here. And I don't know how you can just tell me $75,000 is going to address it. I was trying to figure out, was that the combination of the two? But just walking alone and trying to address the audio speakers, do they even work out here in the parking lot? We don't have those green Bose speakers that were placed throughout the parking area. I mean, there's a number of things. If this place is being rented 402 times, the first impression is when somebody drives into this parking lot. You know, even from the tree trimming, like, I just don't see how this is addressing the things that come out. And I know I'm a big stickler and I pay attention to everything, but when I pull up here, I notice all of these little issues that need to be corrected. And I'm just trying not to put a Band-Aid on it. This is the time where we need to set aside funds to address these issues. If this place is operating 402 events per year, that's more than the number of days per year that there is. So we need to make sure that we're putting every one of them. I mean, I don't expect this place to even break even until we can get some other businesses here, but we need to be putting every dime of what we get in rental revenue from Rafiki Tiki and from rental of this facility back into it. I just don't see how first of all, we're not even putting the money that we received here back into it. And I think at a minimum, we need to do that. Because I can point to a few other things. There's this huge crack. I mean, there's and that's why I brought up this question about using a property maintenance company, because I don't know how you get a crack in the wall like that. And that issue just seems like, it's just becoming larger and larger. And I'm trying to figure out, how do we begin to address like the long-term things? Because I can tell you, this is not going to be, I'm not going to be here in 10 years, but this is not going to be any different than what the city hall had 25, 30 years ago. It's like, if we're not very proactive with addressing this and making sure we're putting the resources there, you can expect that these problems are going to get much worse.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Commissioner.
You got to consider that this is the sleeping quarters for many people that are displaced. And I'm saying that very genuinely, but if you come through here, any time of day, you got this place being occupied. So consider that, Mr. Scott Evans. And
thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Commissioner Lanier?
Yeah, there are some of the issues too that I wanted to discuss in regards to this. And I agree with the fact that there needs to be additional maintenance, but I think the issue that I had was, if this is being discussed for management or for even takeover with the Phase 2 project, our spending money into this project now and then being taken over by another management company associated with Phase 2, how do we recoup that money back, number one? And number two, I'm assuming that this is something that's not actually happened yet, but if we're looking to put this kind of money into this building and then go ahead and give it to someone else, then how do we recoup that? Is that a part of the negotiations? Is that a part of how we, get this money back, so to speak?
Mr. Scott Evans, go ahead.
If the board approves the $350,000 or more to do the refresh upgrade, before we expend those funds, we would come back to the board with an update on our discussions for the future of this building. Those negotiations, we could then report on what the financial arrangement proposed is, and the board could then make a determination if you wanted to proceed with expenditures of those dollars or not. But until we have that prepared and analyzed, prepared by the developer and analyzed by our team, including J. Jones, Lang, and LaSalle, I can't give the board the info that you're looking for right now. But what I can say is, before the dollars are expended, we will bring to you the negotiated terms for this building.
What's that? So I guess to piggyback on that, so we're going to be waiting on negotiating these terms before any of the repairs or maintenance of this property will be expended. So that means the concerns of Councilman McCoy with the speakers, the pressure washing, the lighting, everything will be on hold till we negotiate these terms?
I was responding to the comment from the commissioner. The major expenditures, which is flooring, carpet, furniture replacement, and interior painting and surface repairs, we will we will not proceed with those because they need to come back for the board decision. Like, what does the floor look like and what is the final bid cost? So I know that we will have a conversation with the board before those are ready for approval. But some of the other minor improvements, we are proposing to proceed with them, like the lighting and some of the exterior repairs to the building and some minor repairs around Marina Village. We would propose to do those.
Where the budget? What line item is that? Minor repairs versus the major repairs?
It's just listed on this slide, minor exterior repairs.
So the 350 is for the major refresh.
The 350 is our proposed budget for all of those items.
So that includes the minor and the major.
Yes, we don't believe we have any major exterior repairs to the building. We were concerned about the crack that Mr. McCoy had mentioned. We had the building official come out and look, as well as followed up with a structural engineer to ensure that the building itself was safe. So we do have to repair that, but it's not a structural issue.
So I guess for clarity, what I just heard you say on the record is that you would not expend any of this money until a negotiated term was put in place. Yet you're telling me the minor repairs now will be expended out of this 350. So which one is it, Mr. Evans?
The question from Commissioner Lanier was bringing up the issue of whether or not we wanted to spend any dollars to improve the event center. So it's a completely board policy decision whether you want to hold on all expenditures, some of the expenditures, and staff will implement whatever direction you give us. So yes, we could put all of the expenditures on hold if that is the board's desire. So I was just responding to the concern that we do not yet know what the future development use for this building would be.
And I guess that's my concern because we do not know what the future use is going to be. Are we going to be working hand in hand with the developer to determine what these major repairs, flooring, carpet, replacement of furniture needs to look like if they're going to be doing operations? If we're budgeting this 350 and we're also negotiating terms with them, are they going to have a discussion or decision as to what investments we put into this project? If they're going to be taking over the operations, are they going to determine what our flooring looks like? Are they going to determine what the lighting looks like? Are they going to have a hand where we're all voting together? So it's being clear with these dollars and what's going to happen. In our agenda review, we talked about the maintenance plan. Mr. Jonathan Evans, when can we expect a property maintenance plan or policy to be brought to the board? Because we're doing a lot of development across the city and CRA. And I want us to not be in the same position to where our facilities are falling apart and we have continuous maintenance oversight, whether it's a property management company or it's an internal staff that's handling and operating and overseeing it across the board. We're doing $1 billion of development and we just finished our first new building. I don't want in 5 years for it to be so decimated that we would have wasted those $20 million of our taxpayers.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
With respect to the building maintenance or facilities maintenance group, we do have some positions that we're asking for as part of the budget for the purposes of building out that particular team. We also are looking at the possibility of a solicitation for contractual services to help augment the staff until we build a team. But I can tell you that definitely by your next budget cycle, if not before, you will have a full-fledged or the creation of a full-fledged facilities management group to handle custodial, to handle security, that will also handle building and property maintenance and the like, to be able to address some of the major facilities that we're bringing online over the next couple of years.
And that will be a department in the city that we're going to be creating?
That will be a division in the Public Works Department.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Evans, for that. Back to the repairs, Mr. Scott Evans. So you're looking for clear direction as to how to expend these 350 with the repairs for the marina, and we're looking for a direction as to what's happening with the negotiation. So it's hard because we're kind of at a stalemate. We don't know what's going to happen with negotiations, what's going to operate, and when we will be relocating from this facility into our city hall so that they can utilize this for renovations, for space for the hotel. So we're kind of in limbo. So that's a hard decision for us to make. We do want to beautify and renovate this facility, make sure that it's the 402 visitors that are coming here annually are seeing the best of Riviera Beach. But I don't want to go replace carpets and then it'd be a wasted expenditure because they want to come in and put in marble floors. So it's for the usage of weddings and visitors from the hotel. So colleagues, if we can kind of give some feedback for Mr. Evans as how to approach with this expenditure of $350,000.
Mr. Chair,
Let me go with Commissioner Miller Anderson, Commissioner McCoy, then Mr. Evans.
So I know that we all see there are many things in that building that needs to be repaired or replaced like now, like yesterday. I don't think it makes sense to say that we're gonna sit here and wait and figure out what's gonna happen with the next phase. Because, just when we're sitting back just a couple of weeks ago, Mr. McCoy and I were, observing the carpet coming up in behind the dais. Also, we have paint that's peeling in the bathrooms, and in order for us to continue to rent the place, it has to look presentable, and thus far, it has not. So I think we definitely need to move forward in terms of doing some repairs. That's without question. And when are the negotiations going to wrap up? When are we going to get to that point? I think we're somewhere down the line with that. So I think we do need to go ahead and move forward with making a decision on getting this stuff done.
Thank you, Mr. Miller Anderson. Commissioner McCoy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's correct, Ms. Miller Anderson. I'm very cautious in saying this, but I think we need to do it before these repairs become life safety issues, and I think we're almost there. I gotta remind the members here, we had a League of Cities meeting here, and obviously they didn't get a good, in-depth look because we're in here pretty regularly. But I can tell you, I remember when I was a legislative staff member and we had League of City meetings in the old Newcomb Hall. This is a much better facility, and I would think that this is a flagship facility, considering where you get a event space throughout Palm Beach County. We're probably the latest and largest space that I know of that is regularly attended. And I think just because of our accessibility to the water, this place is in high demand. We shouldn't wait on what may possibly happen. It's our duty to address it now. Even sitting back here, I can just kind of observe issues and things that come up. And I think we want this to be where people come to have their wedding. I don't want to wait. I seen light bulbs up here that was missing. So I think we need to even true up even further because, just from the routine painting, that in itself, on top of, I seen water intrusion. It's like, this shouldn't even be a conversation because we don't know what's going to happen. And it took us 5 years to even get here. So I think to sit here and just have a discussion about deferring this even longer is just not being, the most responsible. I think we have to do it. In fact, I don't even know if that's enough. I would like to see that this is an ongoing project and that we set aside enough funds way ahead of time because, this is a real issue. And just look at the northeast corner of this room right now, and you'll see it yourself from here, how much we need to make sure that we do that. Now, here's the other thing. The northeast corner is that way, Doc. near Pierre. But listen, the other thing is we still need to account for the rooftop east side that still hasn't been built out. So I think we certainly need to put those dollars in. And where do those funds come from? When we come talking about the complete the build out for the top, that's not going to be coming out of this operations budget, I'm sure.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Scott Evans, go ahead.
Yes, we have 500,000 in the capital budget for the build out of the vacant spaces, and that's one of them.
But does that carry for the vacant space next to Rafiki Tika and the rooftop?
It's open, so the total amount, it doesn't limit it to either one. Yes, the 500,000 is available for build out of either of the spaces.
And here's the thing. So if these are permanent leasehold improvements for whoever the tenant is going to be, why don't we draw that money out of the CDE?
The CDE dollars are available. We anticipate using them possibly to contribute towards the build out. and also possibly towards the community benefits program that we're anticipating. We know that there's going to be we're going to require that new local business opportunities are created in the next phase of the Marina Village. And so that's one also potential avenue for the CDE dollars to be reinvested in the project.
Seems like a much better, I mean, do we have something that we anticipate on using those dollars for in the next year and a half? But I think certainly the major improvement issues need to be addressed from the CDE. That's my recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, just to echo some of the sentiments of the board, it would be my recommendation that you proceed forward with the repairs that are in this facility, and then also support staff's closing of the facility for a significant amount of time to be able to put the TLC into the facility that's necessary to be able to accommodate. Because as you saw, with 403 events conservatively, that's the events that we have applications for and documentation. But at any sunny weekend, you have 1,000+ people that are just meandering through Marina Village. And so you have activities that are happening all the time. And so it would be our intent to move forward with that sooner rather than later, because it's something that we also want to have the discussion with you about the fees associated with the space and how we can generate more revenue with this facility space. Some of the audio-visual upgrades that we're considering is that you would be able to have a wedding here, and then, grandparents in New Jersey can be able to log on and watch and view what's happening simultaneously. There would be situations whereby the audio-visual equipment and the stuff that Mr. Stevens uses for the production of this meeting, you wouldn't have wires and cameras and things affixed to certain areas. So it would be a significant improvement. And then I think also allow for you to host some events that maybe we would not be able to host because we just don't have some of the modern amenities that you're finding in some of the new meeting spaces. So we can definitely bring this back, and obviously it's going to come back to you in some form or fashion, but it would be staff's recommendation to move with that sooner rather than later. We should have good information to you all by your first meeting in October with respect to where we are concerning the negotiations and where this particular facility falls in the grand scheme of things. If I'm not correct, Mr. Evans, please provide any insight. But I think we're pretty close to having some clarity with respect to this facility and the use of the event center.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Pro Tem?
Just quickly, do we have a regular maintenance, basic maintenance budget for this building?
Yeah.
It's included in the line item repairs and maintenance, and their schedules, and the ambassadors do, clean the bathrooms, and they clean the carpet, and several times a year we bring in a professional company to do an overall cleaning, but there are some things that the ambassadors are able to do. I did want to point out, there was something mentioned about the bathrooms outside. That goes hand in hand with the strategy with the Clean and Safe initiative with the police, because they're doing all that they can to try to keep the bathrooms clean and functioning with the use and the disuse of the facilities outside by transient citizens.
Yeah, and I think that I don't have a problem at all in terms of putting money into this building to upgrade it. That wasn't really my question. I think the question was, we sink a lot of money into it, and then we end up on the back end negotiating for someone else to take it over. My question was that if that's the case, are we going to be able to negotiate what we've spent in the building? Because it doesn't matter to me in terms of getting this building up to par. My concern is on the back end, if it is negotiated to be in another person's hands, so to speak.
Thank you, Pro Tem.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Certainly, as part of the negotiations, if we're going to invest resources into that, we will attempt as part of the negotiation to recapture any expenditures that we have as a result of that. Whether they accept it or whether the board is agreeable to that, that's certainly left for another conversation, but we certainly will advocate for recapturing of the investments that we would make and make sure that the investments are of quality, that it wouldn't be a situation where it would be something that they conceivably would want to rip out for the purposes of not being able to profit off the space if that's part of the arrangement.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Continue, Mr. Scott Evans.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The Marina Village Phase 2 is a major focus for us in the coming year. In this past year, the board was able to successfully approve 99-year lease agreements for Element 7, which is approximately 400 units of residential, and then Element 8, which is an affordable housing project that they are now looking for to obtain tax credits so that they can proceed on. So in the coming year, we would like to bring before the board the opportunity to approve the development agreements and ground leases for all of the remaining elements in the Marina Village Phase 2. That includes a hotel, which is shown Element 6, our 3 waterfront restaurant pads, the build out of the vacant spaces that is in the event center, development of a integrated public parking garage, and then the creation of some sort of number 5, which is the retail market and entertainment. So we are anticipating on October 11th, bringing to you a significant update, which will feature Jones Lang & LaSalle's analysis of the current business terms. We have invited the development team to come and to present those. So we have been working hard to try and get those business terms ready for you on the holistic approach, which would include business terms that are integrated for parking garage, hotel, and waterfront restaurants.
Chair,
Pro Tem, go ahead.
I wanted to ask 2 questions. First, where did we ever land with, remember the last meeting we had in regards to this affordable housing at the marina for Phase 2, that it ended up being elderly housing? So where did we ever land with that in terms of how we're going to proceed?
They did, as of today, the tax credit application was submitted with elderly, and it's mixed income housing workforce up to 80% of AMI, with ages from 55 and up, classified as senior. What we asked them to do is prepare I guess, an alternate proposal of the mix of housing incomes between the tax credit project, the 2 towers on Element 7, and we are reviewing a draft of that, which you all will see in the next few days. They are ready and eager to meet with each of you individually, and as Scott said, to come at the next meeting to talk about something that we think will be a better blend of income levels between all of the housing units. So it's not just market rate in Element 7 and tax credit rental for elderly in Element 8. So they've worked on that, and the team has to review the document, and you all will see something shortly. And we've been pressing upon them to get it, and they've been working hard, but they did submit the tax credit application.
And I think the last question is this. We're having this discussion about Phase 2 as a part of the budget, but that's a huge project, and I really would like to make sure that at the next meeting, if we're going to discuss Phase 2, that the people who are involved in Phase 2 show up at the meeting and not be over on the telephone. Because this is a lot of money, it is a lot of moving parts to it, and to have people talking about this kind of money over the phone is not even respectful of taxpayers' dollars. So if we're gonna have this conversation about phase two, everybody who's involved with it needs to be here at the meetings.
I echo those sentiments. We spoke about that previously, and I think the last time the development team did ask if it was okay because it was a last minute notice to speak over the phone, but we did say that we want to make sure that they're here. So October 11th, if we can, just make sure that the partners and development team are going to be in place to present to the board. I did have a question about the public parking component. Looking at this phase two development, do we have any dollars budgeted for any incentives, initiatives for public parking? Are we looking to pay for any parking? Is there an allowance that we're going to allocate? What are we doing with the parking component?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
The end result of the negotiations, we will come back to this board if we need to raise additional dollars. The CRA could borrow those money. Also, the city is developing a parking enterprise. So we're working collaboratively with the city. So we would bring back any fundraising proposal that's required to raise any funds. As of right now, we're negotiating for the development team to build the garage and for us to participate on an annual basis to lease some of the spaces that we need for public purposes.
Have we had any? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mr. Evans.
But the plan has always been that if there was some capital that's required, that we would work collaboratively with the city on how we would raise those funds, and then we would come back to the city council and the CRA board for approval if the business terms that required those funds were also blessed by the council and the board.
Okay. And Mr. Jonathan Evans, when is that parking plan? When is that coming before us? We got the email, but when are we supposed to be discussing that?
Mr. Chair, I believe that item is scheduled to come before you, your first meeting in October.
I understand that regardless of how we move, whether this project goes through or not, that we have to address that parking and this public parking component that we have. We've struggled with parking here at this marina, and the parking, as we know, is a major revenue generator. The amount of tourists that come to this facility that aren't from this community, that visit this location and also our Ocean Mall, would have no problem paying for parking. So in October, when we do have that plan and we identify that can assist us, because even if phase two doesn't end up going through, we still need to address this parking in our downtown corridor just to make sure that we're capitalizing, because we see how many dollars are going out with infrastructure, with development. At least we can offset some public parking in these facilities with the housing components that are going up, with the downtown corridor that we're creating, with the city hall down here. So we need to make sure that we have a parking plan in place to generate revenue to cover that. So I want us to really identify what this parking is going to look like. And if we're going to visit that at a later date and not incorporate anything in the budget, then I know that my board is going to be very intrigued as to what this looks like. So if we're not budgeting it now, we want to make sure that this comes before us as quickly as possible to discuss what this parking is going to look like. Pro Temp Lanier, go ahead.
Yeah, not to say that it is utterly ridiculous that we're looking at elderly and low-income housing for waterfront property rather than market rate and luxury housing. I just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you, Pro Temp. Continue, Mr. Board members. Continue, Mr. Scott Evans. Thank you, sir.
The initiatives, I just wanted to touch on a few of the other initiatives that we plan to implement or continue in the coming year. The Tiki Market, which runs every Sunday, this year is proposed to start on October 22nd to May of 2024. We propose to develop a new grant program. We would like to work with the city's economic development department to create one that's for business startups, business relocations, to really provide the type of business support that the board described at our previous meeting earlier this year when we were looking at some of the supportive services that help the new businesses or relocating businesses be successful, grow, expand. So that's we're proposing to develop that and bring that to the board for approval during this new budget year. And we're looking at the collaborative effort with the city's economic development department so that we can make it available citywide for new businesses. In the coming year, we have the development solicitation for the 2600, which is now also 2601 Broadway project, has been issued. So that is now available. And then we are looking to follow that with the development solicitation for 1851 Broadway. This year, we will be working with the Port of Palm Beach. They have proposed some significant changes in their new master plan. Those changes would require amendments to the CRA plan, the comprehensive plan, and potentially the city's zoning map. So we will be working to discuss those changes with the Port of Palm Beach to understand the impacts of their master plan, and then to try and integrate and facilitate a future meeting between the elected officials to solve those two differences. The other project we're looking to proceed with, we continue to provide assistance to new development projects that happen in the CRA. We meet with those projects. We track them as they move through the city process. We'll continue to do that, and we'll also be looking to implement our signage and commercial grant programs as we move into the coming year.
Chair,
Pro Tem, go ahead.
let me ask, I remember this 2601 Broadway project that the consultants came to us last year around the same time, saying they would take 3 to 4 months to actually get this thing out and back. And now we are at another year and we are putting it out apparently again. So what happened in between that time that we had to wait a whole year to get it back out again? Because clearly the consultants didn't do their job, because they came to us and said last year that it would be this process that would be fast. It would, we'll have something, something going with it. And now we're back again another year and we're still talking about putting this out. So I just really want to know what happened with this, that we have lost a year on this particular piece of property.
I'm not sure I can discuss since the existing process, but I can certainly say the previous process, it was issued in December of last year. We got 4 or 5 responses. We evaluated those responses. There was issues with that evaluation process that were raised, in which we had to bring in outside counsel to determine what to do. That outside counsel then worked with the CRA's counsel to make a recommendation with the procurement department, and that came before the CRA board in May. I believe it was May of this past year, identifying the issues that happened during that procurement process. The board came up with the idea, rather than restarting, but then to issue the procurement with RFQ and with the request for proposal. So the board directed us to issue it for not only qualifications, but also with the proposals, which was the next step, so that we didn't lose as much time. And that combined RFQ, RFP has now been issued by the procurement department.
Now tell me this, do we still have?
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry, Chair.
Can Walter, thank you. I couldn't see, he had the camera on someone else that wasn't talking. Thank you.
And then the last question about this particular piece of property in the process, do we still have those same consultants working on this project?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Yes, we do have the same consultants working on the project. The issues that occurred were not related to the consultant.
Who was ready to?
The procurement process did not proceed in a way that allowed us to proceed with
But
confidence.
that's what you pay consultants for. The staff could have done that and then said, oh, we made a mistake, but you pay people money to come in and run a process. And then when the process goes sour, you can't blame the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Pro Tem. Mr. Scott Evans, continue, please.
Special events. In the proposed budget, we have provided $36,000 in funding for board promotions related to your event center activities. This is $6,000 per each elected official. The event center per board policy is available to your CRA board once per quarter. In response to the feedback we received at our budget workshop, we have added a $40,000 reserve for signature events. And this reserve would be spent based on a future policy discussion by the CRA board. So we would bring that back to determine how you would deploy that. But in the proposed budget, we have reserved 40,000 in case there's a signature event that you do want to support or move forward with throughout the year. The way the funding, the total legislative funding for each of our elected officials in the CRA budget, it provides $5,000 per each individual for travel, $6,000 for promotions, which is the amount listed above. And then also we provide training and development of $1,000. These funds are in addition to the budget that is provided on the city side.
Mr. Chair. So I
Mr.
want to make
McCoy.
sure that this is clear on the record so people don't believe that we just go splurging and stuff. But this is for, and I don't understand why this has been an issue in the past, but this is for members and legislative staff as well. Is that correct, Mrs. Scott Evans?
Yes, it's for the dollars are used for community events, for
I'm speaking of specifically travel.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Jonathan Evans.
Yes, the funds that are provided for in the commissioners' budgets is utilized by the commissioners as well as their legislative aid. So it's not to be perceived that one specific elected official is utilizing all those monies. Their budget is to also accommodate the training, the conferences, and the sessions that their legislative aides attend as well.
Thank you. And to follow up on that, the travel budget, what was the travel budget last year from the CRA for the commissioners?
the total budget amount was 50,000.
I'm sorry, per commissioner.
That is
7,500, I think.
So we're reducing the travel budget this year for the commissioners?
Yes, effectively, yes, it's being reduced.
Okay.
We looked back at the last 3 years, and the amount that we've proposed for this budget would cover the total amount used. Also, I believe it was an error that it ended up at 50. However, it was available, but it wasn't utilized.
Okay, so Commissioner Miller Anderson, go ahead.
Wasn't it always 10,000 per person?
Yep.
I don't recall what the previous was. I do know that what the combination of travel and promotions. So I'm not aware of what it was. Perhaps
Yeah, it was
Shirley
that
could
for a
provide
number
that.
of years.
So to piggyback, for clarity, it was 10,000 travel. We were also informed that the legislative aid could not use the CRA budget for travel. It had to come out of the city budget. So I want to get some clarity with that for the travel budget moving forward. And then the promotional budget. So we've dropped it in half for travel when I think we were very clear that travel has actually gone up. So I think we need to really address the travel budget for legislative budget. The promotional budget that you said you have is 6,000. Is that relative to the 36,000 in funding for board event activities? It says next to it, event center activities only. So that promotional budget is being restrictive to being in the event center, not just throughout the CRA?
Historically, that's where all those dollars have been spent. I think under the new line item that it will go under is promotions, which is a flexible line item for you to use, not necessarily in the event center.
I'm just reading what it says on the screen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because it says the original conversation at our budget discussion was that in the past, the CRA board had provided the $36,000, which had been utilized for events in the event center. By transferring those funds, so that was what the conversation was related to. By transferring them to the promotions account, I believe you will have the flexibility to spend them outside of the event center.
I'm sorry, by doing what? By transferring them, you said?
Yes, the account that it'll go into is actually promotions. So you can spend it on your events at the event center or elsewhere.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead,
I'm
Councilwoman,
sorry,
Commissioner.
presupposing that that's in the CRA, though.
Yes, all CRA dollars must be spent in the CRA.
Okay, so I would, board members, I know we've had the discussion since we're on the CRA now, that we've talked about travel. I know that the budget we've discussed was $10,000 previously for travel, and I just want to make it clear that moving forward, that's for legislative aid and for commissioners for previous years and current year, so that we understand that I would be in support of us keeping it at the 10,000 it's been for the travel, promotional budget, keeping it the same, and then the training, keeping it there. So that would be my recommendation, colleagues.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Miller Anderson, go ahead.
so for the promotion, please help me remember this. So for last year, we had 6,000 in promotion on the CRA side?
Commissioner Miller Anderson, go ahead, Mr. Jonathan Evans.
Mr. Chair, you should have received a document that was provided on the dais. This was a document that was facilitated by both finance and CRA staff to talk about your fiscal year 2023 adopted budget, your legislative budget, fiscal year 2024 tentative budget, and then incorporating, if the board agrees with the transfer of the funding being provided, 5,000 for travel, 6,000 for promotion, and 1,000 for your training and development. So I do want the tentative budget that we're looking to propose for the city council's CRA Board of Commissioners goes from what you adopted in 2023 of 135,000 to 157,000. And I do want to go over some of those items that are specifically mentioned. The travel and per diem goes from your tentative budget 12,500, and when you incorporate that, it goes to a travel and per diem up to $17,000.
Hold on, Mr. Jonathan Evans, I'm sorry. You're combining the city and CRA budgets right now?
Yes, we're having both the city and those three items that were put up on the actual chart. And the rationale behind that, it allows for better tracking, better management of P-card reconciliation, and greater flexibility for the board if it's all in one particular account. So it's staff's recommendation that you consider allowing for that to occur. But for promotional activities, your promotional activities, and we did increase your promotional activities and travel and per diem on the city side as well. So in your 2023 budget on the city side, it was.
I'm sorry, Mr. Evans, I apologize. I don't mean to cut you off, but we've already had the city budget discussion. We're having the CRA discussion. I don't want us to cross over. Once we've made our legislative responsibility to the CRA and how you want to handle it legislatively in regards to trying to move dollars from the CRA to the city and combine into one budget, that's fine. But I think we want to just focus right now on the CRA budget, which is we're talking about the 5,000 travel, the 6,000 promotions. So I know that you're trying to combine them to just give a clear vision of what holistically we'll spend, but let's just keep it with the CRA because this document doesn't help us when we're just talking about the CRA right now. Please.
The intent was just to provide the entire picture so the board can see it holistically. But if the board wants to discuss just the items that are there, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure you have this as a reference point.
And I agree, but we did adjourn that last meeting, and we're now sitting as the commissioners for the CRA. So I do want to kind of focus just on this so that we can have a clear direction. And then however you deem to manage and operate the finances so that it can be easier tracking for staff, I agree. But commissioners, if we can just address the special events and the travel and promotions on the CRA side. So if there's any other feedback, staff has recommended the 5 for travel, 6 for promotions, and training development. Did anyone want to chime in?
Chair, I didn't
Yeah, Mr.
finish.
Chair.
I wasn't finished.
Commissioner, sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Miller Anderson.
So I think he started talking about that because of my question that I was asking. And second of all, whatever that document is, can you email it to me? Because I don't know what you're talking about. And then, but back to my question. So we had $6,000 in promotional last year. I just don't recall, obviously I didn't use it, but I don't recall promotional being on the CRA side, and if so, that, I think, was that Dr. Botel asked the question, it has to be used in the CRA boundaries? Like, that sounds new to me.
And Madam Miller Anderson, that, Commissioner Miller Anderson, that was the events budget where we had one event per quarter, $1,500 per quarter on the CRA side to spend for events. That was the event policy I believe Ms. Marcia Noel had created and presented to us, where we had that dollar on the CRA and we had a similar policy on the city. So the CRA budget was that, they're calling promotions now, but it was an events budget per quarter of $1,500.
Okay, that makes much more sense saying it that way. Okay, but yeah, it was 10,000 for travel.
Thank you, Ms. Miller Anderson. Ms. Commissioner Botel.
Thank you. My question about the travel is, really, where do we go for the CRA? Just the Florida conference, right? The one we have, I'm trying to think why we use travel for the CRA. It's just the one conference. Am I right about that?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Miller Anderson, please.
In the past, we've been able to utilize that for National League, Florida League. Some of you go to those affordable housing conferences. There's a number of places that cross over.
Okay, so it's not just
yeah.
it's not just the redevelopment conference you're saying, it's,
No,
we use it
no.
for the leagues. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right,
Mr. Scott Evans, you had a comment, sir?
No, Mr. Chair, I was just going to,
Opine about
Commissioner
the
Miller Anderson
conferences.
said precisely what I was going to say.
Okay, thank you. So if we can, before we move on to project reporting, do we have anyone that else wanted to chime in on this?
So, Mr. Chair, so
Yes, Councilman.
I had the
Commissioner.
impression when the question was asked about the travel from Commissioner Miller Anderson, when she said, was the amount originally 10,000? Maybe she's referring to the CRA, but I thought we had 7,500 always on the city side. So was there a moment, Mr. Evans, where there was a $10,000 allotment for travel on the CRA side that you recall?
I believe there may have been, Mr. Chair, but it would have been several years ago. This year, we had 50,000 for our 6 elected officials, so that's a little less than 10, but I believe it may have been 10 some number of years ago.
But I thought the mayor was not included in the travel because I thought specifically he was limited. So it may sound more practical that she was right, because I know specifically he shared with me that he doesn't have the ability to use CRA funds since he's not a
It is
voting.
10,000 each.
Correct, yeah, it's 10,000, 50,000 total amongst the 5 commissioners.
Okay, so what was the motivation to reduce it when clearly on the city side it was to increase it because of the increased cost?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
I believe this item is included in our administrative budget. The entire administrative budget was analyzed for performance over a 3-year period. And the desire was to try and reduce all of those costs as much as possible, which we do every year to try and be fiscally responsible. And so that when they looked at what are the expenditures and all of the line items, they were reduced to reflect what we had shown we needed in previous years. And I think in this case, it was an oversight by staff to amend the board's item in accordance with that philosophy.
Well, I would say mildly, that's probably accurate, especially considering the last 3 years, we were literally coming off of COVID, so there was minimal travel. So I wouldn't actually see that reflected in those last 3 years. I would think, certainly I probably did more traveling to the legislative session, which ironically I could probably make the case, like similar to Commissioner Botel asking, I could probably make the case that going to the legislative session twice for the League of Cities as well as for Palm Beach County days will probably, in part, I can relate to the CRA. But yeah, I don't know. Does that, should we be back at that original amount or what? I don't know, members.
I I was fine with it staying at the original amount, the 10,000 it was.
Let's just stay there, yeah. I'm fine with that. Let it stay the way it was.
So with this new process, Mr. Evans and Mr. Evans, Evans and Evans, sounds like a law firm. But I guess so this eliminates completely any kind of need to call Ms. Jenkins or Ms. Desir to ask for. Okay. Well, if it's sufficient in that fashion, then cool. Okay.
If you want to continue, Mr. Evans.
In the coming budget year, we will include quarterly reporting, which we heard at the recent budget workshop. And this will include a scorecard. We will track all of our deliverables. We will measure our projects against the key dates. Original schedules will be updated. If they are changing, we'll provide the reason and rationale for that change. We'll track our budgets, expenditures from actual expenditures versus the budget. And we'll also provide any measurables for our ongoing programs and projects. And that quarterly report would be available to the board as we go forward this coming year. Our capital project budget, we did go over this in our workshops. The main new item on here as from last year is the Found Care construction, the property acquisition, which makes $400,000 available for strategic acquisition. We have our 2 Renaissance townhouse projects of $1 million each. We have build out for these spaces of $500,000 here in the event center. Our utility burial project, which was approved on August 16th by the city council. And we are awaiting signed contracts to be sent back from FPL. And and then we also have our public-private partnership reserve, which is reserved for P3 projects. The 2600 one, which has been recently released, is one. The Marina Village project is another. And we are working on a new concept based on board direction provided for our property located at Avenue F and Blue Heron, which is a live-work concept that we're getting ready to show the board to get feedback on at a future meeting.
And then just to wrap up, we presented this information cloud to give you sort of an overall look at things that we look forward to accomplishing this year and some of the things that we did accomplish in the past year. And I just want to point out that we've been talking the last few months about clean and safe innovations. And we hope that there is support for the new community policing effort with the ambassadors in the police department. We're going to continue to move forward very vigorously with the utility burial project to move towards getting that done. We're looking forward to new homeowners in the coming year and looking forward to our Marina Element 7 and 8 leases. We will bring back items that we hope will get us towards the Marina Village refresh project so that we could have a new look, new feel, and new energy in our very much used event center. We're looking forward to our Villa La'An's groundbreaking and to the adoption of our 2023 CRA plan. We will have more commercial business grants. That program is moving along very well. Staff will facilitate new development and transform Broadway with the projects that we are spearheading and our P3 partners. We will have business incubators in our corridor moving forward, not only with the Found Care project, but also having our live work lofts in the Berkeley Landing project. And we will have new policy initiatives for our city and CRA housing programs through the Housing for All project. And we're looking forward at the end of the year, beginning of next year, to a ribbon cutting for the Berkeley Landing project. And with that, we thank you for your attention, your support, and that is the proposed CRA budget for fiscal year 2024.
Chair,
Pro Temp, go ahead.
I thank you. We appreciate the presentation. I think that my biggest concern is the time frame for these projects. Even on the city side, it just takes so long to get these things done. Someone sent me a video last week of a place in the Netherlands, and they built a quarter-of-a-mile tunnel over the weekend. Google the weekend tunnel.
I saw it.
And I mean, we have got to pick up the pace in terms of how we're looking at these. I mean, we're given the money is there. So we really just need to pick up the pace in terms of how we get these projects done, because I mean, I know we're not the Netherlands, but we certainly can do better in terms of getting these projects off the ground. I mean, you say, one of the projects, 2025, that's only 2 years, but then, of course, they're going to be setbacks. They're going to be, so I just really want the CRA and the city to basically see that time is of the essence in terms of getting these things done, because when we're talking about them, people hear it, but they don't see it. So they're saying, y'all not doing nothing. But of course, we're having these conversations about it, and we are, going back and forth, approving this and approving that, but nobody sees it in terms of a building going up. So we certainly need to pick up the pace in terms of getting these projects done.
And Pro Temp, I had those exact same sentiments. I had a conversation with staff, and they did remind me a few things, because, being in real estate, coming from the private sector, they reminded me that we were just post-COVID, that the construction material costs and everything is on back order, and that there were a few projects as well that we've been doing. We're at the same timeline. I think it was either Ms. Jenkins that you kind of gave me that scenario with one of the projects, or Mr. Evans. They gave me a scenario where it was a project where we both submitted them around the same timeline. So it's that we're agreement that we need to move a little quicker. We're ready to move. We're ready to really get everything done. And everything seems as slow as possible because we're trying to just get back to some type of normalcy. So I think with Pro Temp, I'm echoing her sentiments that we really want to just get these things in the ground, get shovels in the ground, and get some ribbon cutting, because, again, we always echo we're on borrowed time. So we just want to see it done as quickly as possible. But if you could give that scenario that you gave to me previously with the 2 properties that we worked on.
Yes, the scenario that I was referencing was I was tracking the progress of our Phase 1 townhouse project. In October of 2021, the board approved the development agreement, which consolidated the ownership of the parcels for the development site and allowed us to proceed with the project. In a similar time frame, another local development completed their property acquisition, which is the recently approved site plan for the new Mariner Marine Yacht facility. So that project, they completed their property acquisition in October of 2021 also. And so our townhouse project moved through the site plan and development approval process essentially at the same time frame as that private development project. And we were able to get approved a few weeks earlier. But I was just using that example because, yes, for development projects, you need to hire the architects, design the plans, amend the plans, get them submitted for approval, and go through the whole process, which admittedly does take some time, but that our townhouse project moved at the same speed as a private development project, or faster, that had been happened to be traveling along a similar time frame as far as when it started and when it finished.
And now I don't know if that's a notice on our development services, if we need to kind of kick it up in their department and get some more help over there and get permitting moved a little quicker, because we're seeing development in other municipal and other governments that's going up at a rapid rate, and we want to kind of be at that same pace. So across the board, whatever help we can do, and I agree with my colleague, and I also echo those sentiments. That's why we talked about that. So I can understand where it's just, we want to get some things done. And what my Pro Temp said, we want to see some shovels in the ground. We really want to make some things happen, and we're excited to do this. So you have the full support of this board to get those things done. Go ahead, Pro Temp.
One weekend. One weekend. So
Um,
please let us
thank you.
finish the project.
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Jenkins, Mr. Evans.
I saw the same project. I think I'd be a little afraid to drive on that road, though.
It's the Netherlands. Oh, it's
Madam Madam Clerk, we have public comment? I'm sorry, do we have comments on this item?
Not on this item, no.
Okay, did we make a motion to move this item?
We did.
Any further discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
No.
Chair Pro Temp Lanier?
Yes.
Chair Lawson?
Yes.
That vote passes 4-1 with Commissioner McCoy dissenting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item, discussion by Executive Director.
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry.
we do have 2 regular public
Thank you,
comment cards.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's go ahead and go into regular public comments.
You're going to read the public comment card comment?
Comments from the public will be at 7:30 unless there's no further business to the council, which the event will begin sooner. In addition, if items considered, then comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item has concluded. Be reminded that the CRA Board of Commissioners adopted rules of decorum governing public conduct over official meetings, which has been posted at the front desk. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the Commissioner Chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, or from the building if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Public comment card from Mary Bram, followed by Margaret Shepherd.
Welcome, Ms. Bram.
Thank you, Chair Board and members. This must be done. This is the crunch that we do during budget time. And other cities participate 12 o'clock, 12:30, whatever time that they need to get the job done. It was a gentleman that was in here, and he was in here for the budget workshop. And he lives down in Fort Lauderdale. But he is the center director of the dedicated senior center that's located on Broadway over there. This coming Friday, they are having a Learn How Dedicated Senior Medical Center is transforming healthcare for seniors. They are giving away vouchers for turkeys and hams. So he said that he's inviting everyone to come out. I have some questions here. The $500,000, the $500,000 that you're going to utilize to build out the spaces for upstairs here too, if I can remember, was the carpet included in this? Because we did make mention about replacing this carpet here in the event center. That's one of the questions. Another question that I have is, in the parking out here, you have the entrance way as well as the exit on the south side here blocked off, barricaded off. Why is that? So I want that answered as well too, because I had to drive back and come through this way instead of coming back through that way there. So why do we have that blockage? And from what I can observe, residents, this is critical. I have to give kudos to our city of Riviera Beach because they did a magnificent job in informing the general public, because water is life and we need a new utility district. On the 18th, they will be at the City Hall. On September the 20th, they will be at the Riviera Beach Event Center. And this is predicated on we as a city get a new water plant in here, which we must have because water is life. I listened to Councilman Lawson. Yes, we do need, Councilman McCoy. Yes, we do need some cleaned up and some brush up in here. And he made mention about the dirty water. Now, where that water was coming from, but I know that the city in its entirety, because if we are to build anything, we must build these facilities to accommodate what we anticipate on bringing. And if we build it, the peoples will come. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Brown.
Margaret Shepherd.
Margaret Shepherd. Good evening, Board,
Hey, Ms. Shepherd.
to the chair and to all of your respectable places. That was a very healthy dialogue. I enjoyed it. I don't usually stay this late, but it was very good to find out how our city is moving. I did have a couple of questions. I saw where Jimmy Buffett had died, and I think, Mr. Lawson, you said something about this might hold up the project or something. I didn't quite get it. That's why I'm really here, so you can explain that. The Judge Rogers site, once again, the seniors are struggling with housing. And how nice it is to honor Judge Rogers by having his seniors over there, because he really was dedicated to the senior citizens. Also, I was wanting to talk about phase 2. You know, I don't think I really heard you all really talk about it or the timeline. I know you kind of hit on it, but I just need a little more clarity with that. And then $19.50 for the ambassadors. When you have all these people sitting in air conditioning and these guys out there in the hot sun, and it's kind of insulting to know that they struggle every day. And I mean, they are ambassadors. They are well trained, and yet they don't get, I don't think they get the compliment that they really, really deserve. And for someone to sit here and say, we, and I'm trying to figure out, you just got here. So how did we get in the picture? Some of these guys here have been 5-6 years, and they are dedicated to moving the city forward by their complimentary hospitality. When you go over on the island, I had my family come over from the Bahamas, and they were carrying the bags, and they were dropping bags, and the little ambassador came right, Miss Shepherd, where you going? The lady looked at me, she said, how you know him? I said, these are our goodwill ambassadors. So I was very, very proud, but I am insulted that the upperclassmen, they get the top of the line, and these people, I call them grunt workers, but they're the ones out there taking care of your toilets, your offices, your people, and yet it's just insulting. You talking about 15% because of what? You know, it's incredible. We live in a time where rent is up, lights, my light bill now is $360. I could not make it on $19.50. So I am insulted that someone will come to this meeting and everybody's living great. Everybody's living perfect, but these are men, Mr. Chair, that does their job well. I'm insulted again by our gardener over at Lindsay Davis. Chris used to come over, give us a little hand, and they need those vegetables. Believe it or not, the collard greens are beautiful, tomatoes are beautiful, and yet and still, $19.50. What an insulting way to live. Thank you.
Thank you
If
for
you
your
would
comments,
just
Ms.
answer
Shepherd.
Margaritaville, I would like that.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, did you want to chime in on any of the comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, with respect to the monies for the build out, we did communicate that the monies that are provided for in the CRA budget does include the carpet in this particular part of the facility, and as well as next door. There is monies that are set aside for the purposes of the build out upstairs, and then there is some other funding that could be available, provided for once we get to that point and we negotiate the terms and conditions with respect to Marina Phase 2. With regards to the traffic flow, Ms. Jenkins, if you want to just provide a brief update with respect to the program that we're doing here, and that's consistent with what best practices are and how we're trying to manage the flow of traffic at the Marina Event Center as well as on the Marina Village a little bit better than we used to. Ms. Jenkins?
You all may notice a few tweaks to the parking patterns. Our new clean and safe manager is trying to better manage the limited parking that we have to make sure that the main parking area is available for our restaurant tenant, for events here at the event center, and that we have the overflow parking lots when we have larger events and on weekends. The south parking lot is we're trying to direct traffic there for the boat owners to make sure that when they leave their cars for multiple days, that they're in a confined area, and that makes it easier for security. And we're just noticing some improvements there. But I hope you see that there is more parking available during the daytime and on weekends in the main parking lot adjacent to the buildings.
Thank you. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
Evans. Discussion by Executive Director,
None, Mr. Chair.
General Counsel? Statements from the board, starting with Commissioner Botel,
No, thank you.
Commissioner Lanier,
Happy birthday, Dad.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
None, thank you.
Commissioner McCourt? Thank you. And Mr. Evans, only questions would be follow-up. Have we set a date for the discussion for housing discussion?
Mr. Chair, I spoke to the office manager and city administration. She is going to be sending out a doodle poll here probably tomorrow that you'll get it, and our partners will get it. But she has identified, and we have identified some dates. So once we get persons to respond to that doodle poll, we'll then be able to have a date for the summit.
And will that be so it'll be like a weekend summit? It won't be in conjunction with a meeting? It'll be something outside of a regular meeting?
Mr. Chair, if I may, we've provided 3 dates, one being a Saturday and 2 being a weekday.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Evans. And Miss Margaret Shepherd, I believe the conversation in reference to Margaritaville is prayers go out to the Buffett family, and we're just hoping that the project and discussions will continue. Mr. Scott Evans is still working with staff and the team on negotiations, but we just want to offer our condolences and prayers to Jimmy Buffett and his family, and hopefully we can still move forward with the project as is. Thank you. Board members, with no further business of the city, this meeting is adjourned.